When I was 6 years old, I used to torment the family cat. I'd dress it up in bloomers of white broderie anglaise, strap it into my doll's pushchair and race around the garage. When it leapt out, streaked across the floor to hide behind the rally bikes, I'd slip a hand around the wheel, submitting to the claws and needle teeth. Then I'd lug it across the room and stuff it back in the pushchair. I don't know why I was cruel to my cat. It's an isolated episode, well, pretty much in the grand scheme of my life. But I do know that it's why I've ended up in the bowels of a swanky clinic in Knightsbridge, hands clenched on the arms of the chair, eyes fixed on the door, because the past always catches up on you eventually. The door is purple of all colours, rich and velvety, more regal than clinical, which is why they chose it, of course, but it doesn't do the trick. Even the shelves are a dusky lilac, their neat rows of perforated boxes ripped open to expose vials and bandages. And they've scrubbed the lino to a chalky white in reassurance that the service I'll be getting this morning is indeed private. So there I sit, waiting for the nurse to return. Each breath, deep and jagged, sucks medicinal wafts into my lungs and down into my belly, bringing on those quivers. Of course, there's a part of me that wants that door to open, to get it over with, the part which has always comforted myself through tough times with the reassurance that in X hours this would all be over and I'd be out the other side. In 1 hour, this filling will be done and that drill will cease. In 2 hours, this meeting will be over and that obnoxious MP out of your hair. In 1 hour, it will be acceptable to escape your self-obsessed mother. In this case, however, I know that it won't be a matter of hours. This one will be ongoing, and so mostly I want to flee from that room. The door opens and the nurse enters with a kind smile for me, which I return avidly. She busies herself, explaining how to prepare the syringe, while her fingers work the packets and the foil wrappers, tossing debris into the pedal bin. Its lid closes softly, with an oof sound, as if it too has a soothing role to play. But that sets me off again, and I clamp the tears back. I've always wondered whether some feather-voiced therapist might absolve me of that cat, might point to Mum's shrieks which punched through my bedroom floor, to the scratches on Dad's arms the next morning. I'm even called Cat, short for Katrina, so maybe there was a hint of self-flagellation in the mix. Whatever, I'm paying for it now. The nurse hands me the syringe with a gentle smile. Take your time, there's no rush. Her voice is somewhere far away as I take it from her, glance down at my bare midriff and pinch a fold of my stomach, studying the flesh which appears to belong to someone else. Silently, I tell myself, you have to do this, you have to do it. There's no point delaying the moment, especially given that I'm usually one to seize it, so I grip the syringe between slippery thumb and forefinger and hover over my belly as if preparing to throw a dart, just as she has instructed me. Still, it takes me a good minute. 180! I plunge the needle in, hearing the presenter of Bullseye from my childhood, and I see my little brother Billy and I playing darts in our new house. The yellow feathers, the black cork slab against the wall, the draft excluder we'd lay down for a line. Of course, I always allowed him to stand well beyond it, even let him creep up and screw his dart into the 20, cheering for him when his face lit up. So I wasn't all bad as a child then. Slowly I push the stopper and watch the clear fluid disappear into my stomach, wondering what alchemy it will craft when it reaches its destination. 200 units of gonal F, a drug they tell me is tried and tested, and perfectly safe. Dom flew in from Japan tonight. I sprint up from our basement kitchen, taking the steps 2 at a time. Normally I don't mind a week alone, but this time the days and distance have fed the jitters already running ragged inside me. He drops the briefcase on the tiled floor of our hallway, and we stand together for a long time, my cheek scuffing his chest, his chin resting on my head, the steady reconnection. I breathe deeply against his shirt. He smells of travel, a little stale, a hint of suit fibres. Missed you, I say. Me too. He pulls me closer. When they see us kissing, people often smile because Dom ranges well over a foot above me, and it always involves a stoop on his part and tiptoes for me. As we kiss now, I reach to take the sides of his head in my hands, knitting my fingers through those tight locks of greying blonde, and I can sense the poignancy of this reunion coursing through both of us. Then he stands back and looks at me, his eyes gleaming. With exhaustion, yes, but there's something else there too, a wonder at what we're about to achieve. How was it, he asks. Fine, I say, delaying the moment. I'll tell you over dinner. 5 grand on the credit card, though. He shrugs. What's this if not a rainy day? Let me see. He shimmies the t-shirt up and out of my jeans, squinting at my stomach as if scanning his PC for share prices. Bit lower. I unzip my fly and place a finger beside my navel. I've removed the diamond stud, which seemed respectful somehow. Slowly, Dom drops to one knee, then the other, and sits back on his haunches. Did it hurt? I shrug, but feel the tears threatening as my husband closes his eyes and presses his lips to the flesh, sliding his arms around my body. After some time, he gets to his feet and reaches for a paper bag. I brought you something back. I see the pink leather peeping out from a fat package of tissue paper, and smiling warmly at him, I take it out. It's a laptop bag. That's gorgeous, thank you. I hate pink, though. I'm more of a chocolate brown girl. Anybody else, and I'd probably let them know. Dom always brings me a gift home, and it's rarely something I want. He'd be hopeless on that programme, Mr. and Mrs. But then he'd get the questions that matter right, like, what would you say if your wife shaved her head bald? He'd laugh. Or, how would you react if she told you she'd murdered somebody? He'd hide me away. And in answer to the question, how would you react if she became unexpectedly pregnant? Well, he'd be ecstatic. I cook as a steak. I knew he'd be craving red meat after all that raw fish, and we eat in the garden, which is spilling over with an abundance of whites. We decided together on an all-white scheme, just after moving in, and the gardenia, iceberg roses, and even hibiscus have now swollen out and up, overwhelming our beds and walls with a cushioning mass of foliage. Funny how our garden is so fertile, and yet we as a couple are not. The evening is a balmy one. They say July 2006 will be the hottest month on record. The nights still seem to be drawing out, and several playful swallows are wheeling high up through the wisps of cerise. I serve us both a heap of salad leaves, and I wonder how to tell him about the clinic, whether I should reveal all or leave the worst bits out. The memory of that purple door alone is making me flush with angst. How was the trip? I ask. Manic. Told him I'm staying put for the next month. Dom nods at the family organiser I've propped up against the water jug. He too has given up wine. The rest of this month is blank apart from the column for our golden lab, Silky, which holds a vet's appointment and her monthly flea treatment. We need to focus on this, he adds. I watch him while he speaks, frowning into his plate, struggling with his own emotions as he saws the meat, spears and jabs it at his mouth. His cheeks, though peppered with a day's growth, are still taut enough. Once again, I think how he might just make it to fatherhood before his 40th birthday next year. Have they given you the timing? He asks. I smile to myself. We both live by structured time. I guess it's what happens when work and hedonism have been your life for 15 years. The pockets of activity, perfectly honed to squeeze the maximum out of each day. They said it should take about 2 weeks for the eggs to grow. OK, that takes us to the end of the month. Have to go back every other day for a scan though. They won't start developing for a week or so, but the clinic needs to monitor me, make sure I don't hyperstimulate from the drugs. Dom motors on, taking swift stock of my words. Oh, we read about that in the bump, didn't we? I'll have to keep an eye on you so you don't swell up like a balloon. We exchange serious nods and reach for our water glasses, which puts that risk to bed. If you talk authoritatively enough about something, you'll set it in stone. That's what we're used to. Even if, in the silence that follows, my thoughts are darkened by a shadow of myself in an ambulance, should the drugs wreak havoc. From across the table, a fat bee flies between us, hovers a while and makes for the jasmine that climbs our garden wall. As I watch it land, I wonder if Dom too feels this signals a happy portent, but he is still immersed in his thoughts. And then the op, he asks. Yeah. Under my first ever general anaesthetic. To harvest as many of those eggs as possible. I clasp his arm, my vision blurring on his skin, which crinkles into papery lines with the flight's dehydration. You'll look after me, won't you? His calm blue eyes find mine. I want this more than anything, Kat, you know that. I'm scared I want it too much. It is going to work. Yeah, I say, adding with fake brightness. First time. First time. It'll pass in a flash, and when it's over, we'll have forgotten all about the shitty bits. You're right. Not sure I'll ever forget that injection, though. His eyes are still fixed on mine. Kat, we're in this together. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, my face bathed by the early morning sun, about to prepare the syringe. By fussing Silky, I manage to delay the moment. She sits expectantly, lead in mouth, while I stroke her velvet head. our mournful eyes locked in mutual sympathy. Our morning routine of a jog in Kensington Gardens is broken today. We'll go soon, Silky, I assure her with a final kiss to the nose, and turn to the boxes awaiting me. First, I have to dissolve 2 ampoules of powder into 1 ampoule of solvent. The fine glass vials of powder have tapered heads, which I snap off, leaving hairline trails of blood and crystal on my fingers. Then, with a large bored needle, I draw up the solvent into the syringe and flush it out into 1 vial of powder. The 2 mix instantaneously, and I draw the resulting liquid back up into the syringe to repeat the process with the second powder. Holding the full syringe vertical, I change the needle to a much finer one, making sure not to spill the liquid even though my hand is shaking. Actually, my whole arm is shaking. I feel like I did on my first day at school. My fear at the sight of children and chaos in the playground. The knowledge that any minute my mother would let go of my hand and press me forward, and I would have to lift a wobbly leg and put it down into a new life, one that filled me with dread. Dom is still in the shower. I can hear water pounding in a distant room of the house. I stand and hold the ready syringe up to the sunlight, which is now streaking onto the oak floor, and I study the large air bubble lodged at the bottom of the plastic tube. A few sharp taps of my nail on the chamber will force the bubble to the surface, at which point I will have to inch the stopper up, painstakingly, to push the air out, without wasting any of the magic fluid. A good 10 minutes lapse until, finally, an air bubble the size of a peppercorn emerges from the spike of the needle and hangs there. Visions of a Hammer horror movie spring to mind, and I am both mad professor who will inflict this potion and unwilling victim who is to receive its mutant powers. Dom appears in his toweling robe. Still jet-lagged, his hair is wet, and a sliver of reddened toilet paper clings to his chin. He looks over at the syringe I am brandishing, stark against the benign light. Oh, you haven't done it yet, then. He opens the fridge and buries his face in it, even though the milk is wedged as always in the door. The sun is now filling the kitchen, turning the sage-green walls to a dusty pastel. I sink back down onto the chair, tug at the belt of my own robe and let it fall open. I gaze down at my thighs, at the tuft of pubic hair, at the wispy grey bruise from the previous day's injection, and I pinch a roll of flesh to the other side of my navel. Visualising a dart before me, I hover once again, telling myself to do it. Now. Nothing happens. Not sure I can do it, Dom. Over my shoulder he is busying himself at the island in the centre of our kitchen, pouring milk onto his bran flakes. Our backs are square onto each other. They told us you could get the GP to do it, didn't they? What about the weekends? Silence. He's already made it clear that he couldn't possibly manage the injections for me. I didn't even ask, because he's off with the Tweety birds whenever he has a simple blood test. And I haven't told him what the nurse said as she bundled up my supplies. How most women have no problem self-injecting. So all these women all over the UK are injecting themselves daily without anxiety or the slightest compunction even. And yet I, managing director of a major Westminster lobbying firm, am petrified of this simple action. I wonder what further secrets I might have to hide from Dom, what emotions I'm about to experience that he will not share. A movement in the garden catches my eye. Next door's Ginger Tom is jumping from the wall onto our lawn. Behind me, a frantic scuffle of claws clatters on wood, and Silky launches across the kitchen like a cartoon dog, her paws spinning in mid-air, failing to find purchase. As usual, she hasn't registered the closed patio door, and the collision is pitiless. Dom is already behind her with pats of sympathy and a friendly daft dog as he unbolts the door, allowing her the dignity of renewed pursuit. But I have been watching that cat, with its one eye raised at me, knowingly, standing its ground until the last moment when Silky is freed, before it leaps back up to the wall, making it perfectly clear why we have to endure this, why we can't just shag our way there like all of our friends have. I'm being punished for my cruelty of 30-odd years ago. Dom turns to me with a smile and a glib, "Good job it's double glazed." I smile back, then look down, taking his eyes with me. Flicking my wrist back, I fling it at my belly. The needle pierces my skin, and I hold it steady before I slowly pump in a second dose of my fertility drug. Because we're in this together. Thank you.